So, when I came out about a year ago, I was a little worried about how I'd be received in the writing community. I'm a member of the Horror Writers Association, and I thought, oh, are they still going to accept me? And and one of the best things was when the president, I came out on Facebook, and the president of the Horror Writers Association, Lisa Morton, hearted my statement, and it was like, oh, okay, it'll be fine. And then I remembered the two prominent horror writers are already trans. Now, I told the story on a Facebook group I'm on, and a person named Erin Greene said, I'm in the Horror Writers Association too. And this is the first time I found out that A, she's trans, and B, she's a fellow writer. So we've got that in common. So I've got Erin Greene on to talk about writing, trans stuff, all sorts of stuff. Hello, Erin.
Hello. Morning. Well, evening for me. I work, my quote-unquote day job is third shift, so.
This is going up at 8 o'clock at night, and who knows when the heck anybody actually watches it on YouTube. Right. So it's morning, afternoon, evening, whatever anybody wants it. I'm just lit better because I have the window coming in. You are releasing a new collection of short stories, yes?
Yes. Excuse me. This week, it'll be on the Amazon. My Amazon author page is, www.amazon.com/author/Erin Greene. There's an E on the end of that, by the way. ERINGREENE. This particular anthology is a short one. There are 8 stories in it. It's called The Worlds of Erin Greene. There are 6 storylines and 5 genres. Do I have that reversed? there is steampunk. I love steampunk. So there is steampunk superheroes. There's steampunk spy adventure, which is kind of a cross between the way I've got the series written. It's kind of a cross between Sherlock Holmes and To Catch a Thief. There is post-apocalyptic fiction set in Southern California. There is modern horror. It is it's the first trans character I ever wrote, actually, too. It is a transgender woman living in modern-day Grand Rapids, who is she's a bouncer at an LGBT bar and a reluctant blood mage and a private detective eventually. Excuse me. It's really dry here. There is, let's see. Then there is the modern urban fantasy. It's about a guy his name is Bob, and he runs a bar. Bob happens to be a retired vampire hunter. And so there are a bunch of different, there's a couple ghouls who are regulars in the bar, a couple vampires. There's a demon who's a dust bunny. And then the last one is Tales of the Shadow Wing, and it's a seagoing high fantasy. There are no hobbits and no elves. So sorry, any Lord of the Rings lovers, but I don't like hobbits and I don't like elves. Actually, I love them, but I just wanted, mine's a little different. It's set in the 9 realms. So there's a guild of assassins, and there's a council of cannibal wizards, and there's Captain Rilso and her crew. Her first mate, Sibin, is gay. I don't set out intentionally to write, it's not a major plot line in any of my stories. Even in the modern horror one, for a gay or transgender character, it's just part of them.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh my God, here's the gay person, or here's the trans woman, or here's the trans man, or whatever, and then the subplot to the story. No, there's a plot to the story. There are 7 short story archetypes, but we can get into that later. But there's a plot to each story, and the subplots involve things like, for example, Annie McKay is the name of the woman who's in the I guess you could call it paranormal detective series. And one of the subplots is that she's going to court to fight for custody for her son with her ex. She's fighting with her ex over custody of her son.
Yeah.
And the ex is trying to use the fact that she's trans against her, et cetera. So sort of, unfortunately, all too real for a lot of people. But yeah, so I'm Irish, so I rarely do long story short. So that's the short anthology. And I do have a Patreon also, under Erin Greene. That one's on hiatus right now, but anybody can go there and read the stories for free that are there currently. There's also an audiobook. I wrote a kid's book a couple years ago called The Land of Fall, because I love autumn. It's my favorite season of the year. And so on this island that I created, it's always autumn. There's like a week of spring, a week of winter, and a week of summer. Other than that, it's autumn the whole year long. And
that's like it is here.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks Buffalo's all winter, but it's autumn most of the time.
And see, that's why I would love Buffalo, because I love autumn. Of course, Michigan, where I'm from. But so in The Land of Fall, it's again short stories, but they're the same characters. But you have characters like Pumpkin Jack, Freckled Molly, Mr. Boot, the Mary That Wouldn't, and my editor who read the stories while she was editing likened it sort of to either E.E. Milne, who wrote Winnie the Pooh, or Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, and I was very happy with that comparison.
That would be too.
But anyway, a friend of mine who I nagged successfully into having a second career as a audiobook recorder. It's brilliant voice, English, dry, narrative, voice that's just perfect for a lot of my stories. Because I nagged him into it, and he's success. He makes like $200 an hour, finished hour of his books. Yeah. He's agreed to do on occasion any work I want for free, and so it's on my Patreon. Also, if you look under YouTube under Erin Greene and Pumpkin Jack, you'll find the first story as an audiobook form.
Oh, nice!
He did a great job with it. So.
I have to take a break and subscribe. No, I'll take care of that afterwards. Just don't let me forget, because my brain doesn't work all the time.
Me not brain today. Yes, I know that feeling.
I've often wondered why I was asked to be in the Horror Writers Association in the first place. Lawrence Watt Evans asked me back in the early 1990s.
You've been there a while.
Yeah. And it's like I had one thing. I had some lesbian fiction that I don't talk about, but I had one thing out, and it's the Wonderland Tarot, which is not in any way horror. It's very silly. It sells well, so that's nice.
Cool.
Yeah. Apparently he liked that, but Jim Moore insisted eventually. So
cool.
That's how I wound up in there. Why did you wind up in the Horror Writers Association?
Well, I'm assuming since you're in the Horror Writers Association, at least of Lovecraft.
Oh, of course.
I am probably one of the biggest fans in Michigan of Lovecraft. I have from the HPL Historical Society, I have the book, which is the complete works of H.P. Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
I have while I'm moving, because I'm going to show you something. I have
Okay.
the various movies that they made. I've got a few of the movies. I've got all of their music. They did two musicals. Or not musicals. They did do a musical, Shuggus on the Roof, but they also did two music CDs, a Scary Solstice and a Very Scary Solstice. And they took the traditional Christmas carols and wrote lyrics to Lovecraftian themes, and they obviously got professional singers because it's brilliant, very well done, very well, pun intended, orchestrated. The music, the voices, whatever, just phenomenal. They've got a couple movies that they've also done. They're working on The Whisper in the Darkness. They did an audiobook of uh, they call it Imprisoned with the Pharaohs, but Lovecraft originally titled it as Under the Pyramids. I helped a little bit in the production of that one, so I got a free copy. But this is Spot.
Oh,
Friend of mine made him for me.
cute elder one.
Yes. If you've ever seen H.P. Lovecraft and the Frozen Kingdom.
No, I have not.
Oh, you need to check. I've got the copy, and I'm going to be getting the other one, which is H.P. Lovecraft and the Undersea Kingdom. In the first one, he goes into another dimension to find his father, to rescue his father. And he meets and befriends Cthulhu. And it's all CGI. And, it's sort of along the lines of about like the quality of RuneScape,
Yeah.
So it's not like realistic, but it's very well done. And then in H.P. Lovecraft and the Undersea Kingdom, he and his father have to rescue his mother from the nefarious clutches of somebody, I don't remember who. But in the first one, he rescues Cthulhu from falling into a crevice. And so Cthulhu befriends him. He's like, "What's your name?" And he says, "Cthulhu." And he's like, "Cthulhu?" And he's Cthulhu. Cthulhu. He's like, "I'm going to call you Spot." So that's what he calls him. Yep, that's what he calls him for the rest of the film. It's absolutely great. It's a great kids film. Great way to introduce kids to the horror that is Lovecraft. But anyway, so I've been a fan of Lovecraft for years, and I wrote a screenplay back in 2002, 2003, and it's still floating around on my computer somewhere, called A Fearful Thing. It's kind of a combination of The Descent, if you've ever read the book or seen the movie, and the Dunwich Horror. So it's kind of a combination of a little bit of those two things. The Shoggoth is involved, of course, because you always got to have a Shoggoth.
Yeah.
And then I also wrote a short story called Don't Look Back. And that short story is, well, I'll say it on here because if somebody goes out and buys the book once I get this short story anthology done, I'll tell people on here, but I haven't actually mentioned it in the book itself. This Cthulhu Lovecraftian short story isn't mentioned anywhere in the book. It's not mentioned in the beginning. It's not mentioned in the foreword. It's not mentioned in the table of contents. Nothing. It's an Easter egg at the end of the book. Surprise!
That's cool.
So I just thought it'd be kind of fun to to do that for my readers. So,
well, I normally write comedy. I mean, humor. It amuses me, but stuff that amuses me. But the thing I'm working on is actually a kind of a serious serious novel, which is, I thought I was going to do this serious novel back in the 90s, and which is why I said, yeah, I might as well. Okay, I'll take the plunge in. But I used at least one editor sent it back and said, you don't know what this novel is about yet, which is an interesting comment on it.
Right.
Well, I figured out what it was about a year ago. So it's it's very very much a trans novel about the which is why the ending I put on it didn't make a damn bit of sense. And the first chapter of the second book, which I freaked out and never finished any of the rest.
Yeah, I've got a whole bunch, a big file in my computer of stuff that I didn't finish, or ideas I'm working on or whatever. I do want to read a very brief thing for you as soon as I can. I hate my computer sometimes. As soon as I can find it. I like to write humor as well. Mine is really dry.
Yeah.
And Irma Bombeck, Dave Barry, Art Buchwald, that sort of. So to give a little bit of backstory, we had to write an essay when I was in college on first year study habits. We could write it however we wanted, but we had to write it. That was our assignment. Just, I want an essay. So I decided to write a humorous one.
Yeah.
And so I wrote about two students and how one does studies well and the other one doesn't, of course. So one who studies well, her name is spelled Gudyshucz, or pronounced Goody Two Shoes.
Goody Two Shoes, yeah.
Right. And Todd is the football star, and his name is Todd Laxensmarts. And so Miss Goody Two Shoes went to the library and checked out a few books relevant to her class, surfed through web pages in Google and other search engines for data that may be more current to her line of study, and wrote notes during her class. This method of preparation provided her with a large amount of information that she could read through as she studied, similar in size to Mount Rushmore, minus, of course, the Washington head. But Mr. Laxensmarts decided that a singular check on Google would be enough for his needs, and he really didn't need to take notes in class because he'd read the book eventually. This method of preparation provided him with the amount of information equal to that contained in the complete illustrated guide to Braille. And so that's, I kind of go in that vein,
Yeah.
On the morning of the exam, she woke to the sounds of birds chirping inside her dorm room. Since neither she nor her roommates had birds, she wondered how they get in there and who's going to clean up that mess. Going to breakfast and on to class, she was alert, aware, ready to hunt the wildebeest, and after having her breakfast full of fiber. She read through every question, answered them to the best of her knowledge, and wielded her number 2 pencil with the accuracy of a Jedi Master wielding a lightsaber. She passed applying colors, and the relief that ensued came from the bottom up, which might have had more to do with the fiber. And basically, I go on in that vein. But yeah, so my instructor loved it. She thought it was awesome. But I don't write, I can't write jokes, one-liners, whatever.
Weirdly enough, I started on, this is so totally off the top, off base here. I started on Twitter with the 140 characters when I feel old now because it's been 240 for how long?
Right. I remember when.
I started on Twitter strictly to tighten up my joke writing.
Oh.
So the first year of Twitter is like about 300 jokes.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I can come up with the occasional bone mow like any other person, but to sit down and write a joke, it's very difficult for me.
I like doing it in story form because it's because my humor is very reactive anyway. I mean, you've seen me on Facebook. My humor is very reactive.
Right.
And um, it's nice because you just get in the minds of the characters and you react as long as, and it's absurd. I do kind of absurdist, but I don't do as much serious as I want to, but I kind of like writing humor better. I set out to be a serious novelist, and that never was going to be a thing for me. I have a couple of serious things in me, but I should get them out before they fester.
Right. My difficulty is, with the ADHD and everything else going on, plus, life in general to begin with, I suffer from two things as far as writing novels. One is a squirrel. I get distracted easily.
Yeah.
And the other is, I've always been this way because I like to draw since I was 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
But once I'm done with something, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to do that type of thing anymore. It's really difficult for me to return back to something. So it's, in my writing, I had to learn to go, okay, so you wrote a steampunk story, and that's cool and fine and dandy. You need to write another one. No, you need to get up off your butt and sit down at the computer and write another story. Sit down, write something. And so, but one of the things that for me helps me is, A, like I said, short stories. I can kick out a short story, a 10,000 word short story in 2 hours. And B, if I'm stuck, writer's block, whatever you want to call it, on this story, I have 7 other projects I can work on.
Well, yeah, that's the way it should be.
And I can advance that. So, like, I've got that anthology that we mentioned earlier. I've also got a science fiction series of short stories, again, but involving the same characters, almost like TV episodes, that I started. And that I ran a contest on my Facebook, which I always do, for character names, but I don't mean like for the ideas of character names, but what I do is like for the modern horror story. 10 of the characters in there are people from my Facebook. And so what I did was I said, if you want to be in as a walk-on, maybe permanent, maybe not character, I'll make that decision. But if you want to be a character, make up a limerick for me that is horror themed. Don't just copy something because I can Google. Okay, so make up a limerick for me, and then I will pick the 8 to 10 or so that I like, and you guys will become characters. And one of the people on my list is the main villain of the whole series. One person is the villain of that particular first set of stories. One of them, a good friend of mine, she is a pagan in real life. She's a black woman and is a what I'm looking for, a devotee of African deities. Whatever she wants, more power to her. She knows I'm not a believer in any sort of woo, but we get along great. And so in the book, she runs a bookstore and has a tea cozy in the back, and has regulars come in and have a cup of tea and whatever. And of course, in the series, magic is quote unquote real.
Yeah.
And so another one of my friends in that same series is a college professor who is an anthropology professor. And so she goes to this professor to find out more information about a particular religion that is going to be the initial opposition to her. She doesn't know much about it, so she has to go find out about it. So she goes to talk to, so I do stuff like that. I run contests, the Steampunk Spy Adventure series, the very first story in it, there's a woman named Irene, and I got that name from a friend of mine named Irene. I said, the first 5 people, I'll pick one of you, and whoever picks the location that I like the best will get, a character in the story. And I was actually thinking of the United States at the time, but she said Amsterdam. So I went to check it out, and it's a waterfront town, etc. And so, a steampunk 1800s, with airships and whatever would be perfect for it. So she got the part.
Yeah, actually, never think of steampunk in Amsterdam, but that would be perfect. Well, damn, I wish I thought of that.
Yeah, I always love, I don't know if you know the Foreigner series by C.J. Cherryh.
Yes, of course.
Okay, she's on my Facebook list.
Oh.
A friend of a friend, my friend Jessica, knows her because CJ lives out in Washington, and met her a few times at conventions. Of course, I'm jealous, but met her a few times at conventions or whatever. Yeah, I love the Foreigner series,
Yeah.
And like I told Jessica, because Jessica's also written some young adult fiction and middle grade as well. And when I can like an author's work, but when I read some work by an author and I go, I wish I'd written that. Yeah, that's definitely a thing for
me. I feel that way about James Morrow, who's a lot more obscure than C.J. Cherryh, but which is unfortunate. Towing Jehovah was probably his most famous work.
What is the name again?
Towing Jehovah.
I don't think I've heard of it.
Yeah, he's a little bit obscure for a lot of things. I met him at a convention, and he started talking about the novel that was just coming out, or that the last novel he'd had out, and I was like, this is something I want to read. I want to read it immediately. I went into the sellers tables and found a used copy that was signed, of all things, and
wow.
He re-signed it for me, which was kind of cool. And then
it's signed twice.
Yeah. So it's one of the few books I've ever dropped in the middle, because it was that. It's called "This Is the Way the World Ends," and I dropped it in the middle because I was like so blown away by it. I was like, "Holy shit!" So
yeah, I think there's been maybe. Same mechanism, but for different purposes. Maybe been 2 or 3 books in my entire life, other than like something I had to read for school, that I started reading and had to put down because I didn't like it. And The Fountainhead was one. And I thought, my friends were like, "You need to read this book. It's really great, and she's a really great author." Okay, whatever. And I didn't really like her to begin with, but I thought, other writers have problematic issues. Robert Heinlein. I love Robert Heinlein. He's one of the most brilliant storytellers, I should say.
Yes.
Whom I've ever read. When I read The Long Watch, no matter how many times I've read it before, I still choke up each time I read it.
I can see that. Well, you were in the military, so.
Yes. But by the same token, he's homophobic. He's misogynistic. And I didn't even realize that until a friend of mine pointed it out to me. And she said, "I like Heinlein too, but blah, 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 blah." I was like, wait, what? So I had to start thinking about it, And like in his is it Methuselah Returns? Whatever. It's his second in the series of, there's Dora and Lazarus Long and.
Yeah, I'm totally blanking. It's right on the shelf downstairs too.
Yeah, but anyway, again, he's a great storyteller. But Stranger in a Strange Land. Much as I love that book, and there are places I like Jubal Harshaw. There are places where I quote it. After she said this, I went back and reread it, and I don't see how I missed it before.
Well, some of that was Scribner's fault. if you could read the uncut version,
Okay.
A lot of that stuff is gone. A lot of the stuff that he was sort of forced to put in there was gone, and it's about a third longer and gets a lot more into the philosophy of it. Some of the cool one-liners are gone too, but
Right.
You have to.
I mean, it's still a great novel. Citizen of the Galaxy. I find myself with, to slightly diverge from the topic, but not quite. Not so much about bad, but just Arthur C. Clarke is an author that I have a hard time. I love his work. He's a great storyteller, but it just seems like almost everything he writes ends depressingly bad. If you read the Rama series, if you read especially Childhood's End,
yeah,
that one is I love the first. Of course, the first half is sort of, I guess you could call it Star Trekian, that type of thing. Aliens come and bring peace to the planet and whatever. And then there's one he wrote about two friends who are sort of underwater rangers. They have like subs and scuba suits and whatever. I can't remember the name of it. And it's, again, of course, he's Clarke. It's very well written, but one of them dies like a third of the way through the book, the first third of the book. And I'm thinking, the way he wrote it, I'm thinking that that it's going to be like a last minute rescue, that type of thing. Nope, he dies. I was like, really? And I just got to the point. Sometimes I feel like I understand that to write a story and make it interesting, interesting to read, there has to be some sort of conflict,
right,
in some way, shape, or form. But I just, a lot of times, that's why I almost never watch movies anymore. And I do read, of course, but I almost never watch movies or TV or anything anymore because it almost always ends depressingly. And I just, I got enough depression in my life already. I don't need to add to it. You know what I'm saying?
No, I have a TV show for you. You must watch either the good. Well, you must watch The Good Place. That's also a requirement for one of the three of the groups we have in common.
The Good Place?
Yes.
I don't think I have.
It's only going to run 52 episodes total. The last 13 are about to come out. And I can't tell you anything about it. A person wakes up and they're in the good place after dying. And it's a comedy, and it's bizarre, and it's fun.
I think I have heard something. I haven't seen any clips or anything, but I think I have heard something about that on Facebook or somewhere or something.
Oh, it's yeah, and it's like like I said, we're in 6 of the same groups. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I know there's PSA. Want to give a shout out? I love them. Want to give a shout out to PSA?
Yes.
Horror writers.
Yes. Philosophers in Space.
Yep.
Oh, now I'm blanking on the other two. Pia, I think Pia. You're not on Pia. Never mind. No, I'm blanking on the other two. But
okay.
Most of the people won't know what we're talking about.
They're like, what the heck are they talking about?
But in at least in 3 of those groups, it's like the official show of.
I'll definitely have to check it out. Because like I said, you have to have conflict in the story. It just, I think for me, it's not so much the conflict, and I don't know if it's, I worked almost 20 years in the medical field as a CNA/ER tech.
Yeah.
And my own personal views on an afterlife are that there aren't any. And so, I cherish this life that we have even more so because of that. And so when I see, I don't know if that's because it was reinforced because of my medical training, or I went into the medical training because I thought that to begin with or whatever. But I really have an issue with uh, death. I think it's unfortunate that it has to happen, and um, I hear a lot of people, especially in the skeptic communities, say that they wouldn't want to live forever. Nope, I completely disagree. For me, okay, would have no problem with that whatsoever. But I also know it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to suborn my intellect for something that I know is not going to be true. And I cherish truth for myself and being true to myself too much to give myself false hope.
I've noted one of the things with I don't know if this is writers, fantastic fiction writers in general, or just the Horror Writers Association. There is a heavy dose of atheists in there. I mean, I have 54 friends out of 54 people on my friends list out of the 55. Sorry, I didn't count you for a second. Out of the Horror Writers Association, and as far as I can tell, all but one of them are atheists. So.
Well, Lovecraft was atheist.
Yeah,
I don't know about Poe. I don't know about the modern writers King or Kuntz or my own personal side issue. Because squirrel, my own personal issue with Kuntz isn't with Kuntz. It's with people who knock his writing. I love Kuntz, especially Odd Thomas. The Odd Thomas series is one of my favorites. And of course, it's got supernatural elements and there's ghosts and whatever. But
I have not read it.
The very first one I read, Odd Thomas has a bunch of different odd friends, and for example, he has a friend, Ozzy is his name, and I think Ozzy weighs like 500 pounds. Ozzy never goes out of the house. Ozzy is an author, and Ozzy, on a bet, someone bet him that he could not do so, wrote such an engaging, that's what I'm looking for, series, story, whatever, about it, that it's, when I believe, if I recall correctly, because it's been a long time since I read the first one, 10 books in this series about a detective who's bulimic. Somebody bet him that he couldn't write a story about a detective who liked to throw up, and so he went ahead and did it. And Odd Thomas can see ghosts. He's a fry cook, short order cook, and one of his friends who works I think she works at the restaurant, or his neighbor. Okay, her name is Rosa. Her thing is Elvis. You can ask her. You can name a day and a specific time, and she'll tell you exactly what Elvis was doing at that moment throughout his entire life. Just so odd care. I love his writing. There's one. I want to say it's called The Other. It's about a dog and a creature. I won't name it in case you haven't read it. And they're science experiments by the U.S. military. And so the dog has been, the dog is like the 8th generation of, of this thing. And he can read. And he can communicate with humans. And he uses, the block thing that they have where kids can spin and spell out letters and stuff. He uses that to communicate with his humans.
This I've read.
It's really good.
I don't remember. Sorry. My passion for dates.
Oh.
I don't remember names for shit, but I remember dates things happened. So I'm like, okay, what would be the date I read that?
Steve, my writing has been likened to Stephen King, and I don't mean that in a grandiose way or, oh my God, I'm like Steve. But one of the criticisms that's been leveled against him, and one of the things I like about him, is that kind of if you pick up one book and read it, you've read them all.
Yeah.
And it's not the plot, it's his narrative voice. And mine is pretty much the same. If you read my steampunk novels, excuse me, if you read my science fiction novels, if you read my fantasy stories, whatever, it's generally very dry, sort of laconic, sometimes humorous, narrative voice, and people have said about my writing that it's like I was telling them a story, and that's kind of what I'd like to do.
That's yeah. I like in one of the things Stephen King has going for him, and for that matter, so does Kuntz, but to a slightly different degree, is a conversational tone.
Yes.
It's the conversational tone is one of those things that I strive for, especially if I'm doing. I tried to book in first person because I said, okay, I haven't tried this before. Let's see what we got. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that so much. I'm doing 2 more from that character. But
Good.
Yeah, the conversational tone. Unfortunately, I pulled it for a while because there was something that was supposed to be making fun of racist tropes in 40s detective fiction, and it wasn't taken that way. As being a satire on it, it was taken as, okay, this is racist. I said, okay, there's a way to fix it.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I don't want to even be close to that problem.
Right.
But in the speaking of dry humor, just my single, I'll go back to The Good Place just for a second.
Okay.
My single favorite joke in the entire series comes in like episode 6 or 7, and she's reading the one character, and I can't. And again, there's so many spoilers, like for everything for this show, that one character is reading the Nicomachean Ethics, and just goes, "Well, who died and made Aristotle in charge of philosophy?" And the other one, who's a philosophy professor, is Plato.
Yeah, I like, there are oftentimes in jokes with fan fiction too, and with I think you mentioned before about us having a lot of the same groups, and we probably have a quite a even larger number of mutual friends.
Yeah.
That the birds of a feather flock together, but I think I completely forgot where I was going with this. I'm sorry, but my brain is just yeah, I'm drawing a complete blank. You were talking about what?
The Good Place, the TV show, and a joke about Aristotle and Plato.
And because my brain will go jump,
Yes.
And I went from jokes. I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to me. So anyway,
that's fine.
Let's skip to a different topic.
We got to hit the trans stuff at some point.
Okay, let's talk about that.
My My coming out's easy. I came out during Dyke March last year to one person. I can't, and I was there. I was there because two of my then current bandmates and one other friend of mine were performing that day. And I came out to one person who just happened to be the head of Pride in Buffalo. So lucky. It was
Right.
a random person to me. Like, okay.
Cool.
And then came out in a one sentence Facebook post. And that's pretty much it. July 9th of last year, went full time by the end of July. And because my insurance requires 6 months of living as before you can start hormones. I went full time as quickly as I could.
Mine took a lot longer, quite a bit longer, actually. My dad used to say about me, if there was a hard way to do something, I'd find it. I knew for decades, but, tried to hide it, of course. And I finally, this was in the summer of 97. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I was living with my now ex, my wife at the time. And what happened was I moved out. We're going to get a divorce. I talked about moving back to Michigan. She said, well, why don't you, because my lease was ending up in the cabin, and we were getting along fine. She said, well, why don't you stay here? You can, she'd had a 3-bedroom trailer. She said, you can have one of the rooms, you just be my roommate. That's fine. So I came out to her, and she was upset for a multitude of reasons, one of which she told me later, that she thought she was upset because she thought I was gonna go to Michigan, get my head on straight, and come back and be her husband. And so when I came out, obviously that wasn't gonna happen. So I called a friend of mine. She's no longer a friend, but she was at the time. A mutual friend, I should say, of mine and my ex's, who came out to my ex a year before that as a lesbian. And I couldn't even say it at the time. I was talking on the phone. I said, that problem that you had with my ex? And she goes, yeah. And I said, I have that same problem, sort of similar. She goes, okay. And we started talking about it. And then I came out to my sister Carol on the phone. And her reaction was very muted. Her little reaction, I said what I said. She goes, and? She's like, okay. So obviously, I was very worried about her opinion, more so than most people. She didn't hate me. She didn't, think of me as disgusting. I'm going to hell, blah, blah, blah. So I came back to Michigan, and it was a slower process for me. I wasn't sure at the time. I considered myself at the time a gay crossdresser.
Okay.
And then I realized after a year or so that the definition of crossdresser didn't fit me, because when I wore bra, when I wore female underwear, etc., it was just clothes to me. There wasn't any quote unquote thrill. There wasn't any, it was just clothes, like putting on a shirt. Whoop-de-doo. So then I was like, so now what the hell am I? And I remember watching, what was it? There was a show on the talk show. It was a rerun. I don't remember who the host was or whatever, but they had a person on who had been assigned male at birth and transitioned in her late 40s after being a cop for all that time. From the time after she graduated the police academy, of course. And somebody in the audience, she mentioned that during the course of the show that she still was attracted to women. And somebody in the audience, a guy, stood up and asked me, he said, well, why are you doing all this if you're still attracted to women? She said, because it's not about who I sleep with, it's about who I am. And although I'm not a lesbian, that was kind of a watershed for me, in that I had to separate what I was oriented to what I felt I was as a person, and realize that I could separate. And then I had to figure out, because I sired 2 biological children, I think that sexuality is fluid, more so than most people think so. Even people who consider themselves, I hate the word woke, who consider themselves more aware.
Yes, it's better.
And they consider themselves more aware, and I think that sexuality is fluid, and I think that for me personally, any time that I had sex with a female, I was visualizing myself as a female. I was never able to participate otherwise.
This is, I've actually gone back. I'm sorry to interrupt on this, but I've actually gone back and talked to my girlfriends over the years, and not exactly apologized, but explained myself a little better.
Right.
And that is one of the that has been one of the things. It's only it's that's been a bit emotional to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it has other, I don't want to say side effects. There are, you throw the stone in the pond and the ripples spread out and affect other things. Yeah. And for example, my youngest daughter and I talked about this, and I, when I talked to her, she was probably 16 when we first started talking about it, and we kind of briefly hit on it a little bit until one day, she was about 18 or 19, we had a long conversation. When I left Oklahoma, she was 5 in preschool, and it was during the week. So I took her to preschool that day with my ex, and she said, I'll see you later, Daddy. And I said, bye. And she went to school, and I went to another state. And the guilt damn near overwhelmed me. Even though I knew if I did not leave, I was going to end up committing suicide. There was no way I could be out and open, especially in a small rural Oklahoma town in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And so, I knew I had to leave for my own sanity, for my own health. But I also knew, like I told her, I said, it didn't matter why I left. It didn't matter that I had to leave for my sanity. It didn't matter in the end of the day that, this was the best thing in the long run. When you came back from school, I wasn't there. And that's a burden that I've had to carry. And I didn't talk to her about that for a couple of decades, pretty close, And then finally, broke down one day and, talked to her a little bit, and, we kept the conversation going or whatever. Both of my daughters are very supportive of me. When quote unquote gay marriage, or as I like to call it, marriage, was ratified by the Supreme Court, the first thing my youngest said to me, she was whatever age she was at the time, she's 25 now, was, when you get married, I better be in the damn wedding. And the same for my oldest daughter. And then a year or two later, my oldest daughter came out to me as bi. And speaking of guilt, when I came back to Michigan, it took me about 6 months before I finally tracked down and got back in touch with my daughter, because I wasn't getting along with my ex at the time. We get along great now, but I wasn't at the time. And I hadn't been in contact with my daughter for a couple of years. And I found out it was after her suicide attempt. And there were, I don't want to say justifications, but there were reasons for that. And I'm not going to go into those, but I told a friend of mine later, because there's no way I could tell my daughters this, but I told a friend of mine later that if I had come back to Michigan and found out that my oldest had killed herself, if my youngest hadn't been around, I would have killed myself. There would have been no. At that point, with me not dealing with my own depression and bipolar and whatever, I have no doubt in my mind that I would have killed myself. I have attempted to commit suicide a couple of times in my lifetime. I don't leave a note. I don't, again, I should say, leave a note. I didn't, post a long, message or, call somebody or whatever. I was done. I was done. When I was 14, I hung myself. And my dad was remodeling the basement. And so where I hung myself from was a brace across the door frame. And what saved my life was that the brace underneath it, there were no braces underneath it. So it was just a 2x4 nailed there. And so, I hung myself. I was going to die. And when, I don't know if it was my weight or maybe my body moving while, going through convulsions or whatever, but it broke the board free. And I woke up in a pool of blood because I hit the chin. I still have a chip that I can peel out of it. It's a little reminder to myself that I survived. I've tried ODing, a couple other ways, and I mentioned this to other people. Sometimes I think the whole, it's better campaign is great. Well, most of the time, actually, I should say, I think it's great. I think that it gives people hope. I think that even in the current climate, lest we wax political, in the current climate, that there is still hope.
Yes.
But there are times, it's really hard to see that, and there are times that it's really hard to when you're for me when I'm in that bottom well of depression. It's like a black hole. It just sucks me in, and I struggle and I struggle and I struggle and I can't get out and I can't get out. And when I'm in that particular frame of mind, anything anybody says is meaningless. I don't care if you say, you love me, don't kill yourself. I'm your sister, I'm your family, I'm your friend. You've got this and this and this to live for. It's absolutely meaningless because that depression filters everything that I hear.
Yeah, the yes. I've tried a couple of times. The last time, the most recent time was a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about this, so I'm going to be a little careful here.
Okay.
Well, I wrote my note as a song. Wrote and recorded my notice.
Okay.
Because that's my thing, my comedies and my writing and my darkness is in my music. And what saved me from downing bottle of pills was I could make the Benny Hill joke right here. After the first two, I felt better. But I got a call that my kid had just tried to kill himself, and was in the and it was in being, being taken to the local. So that takes priority. And
Right.
you know, and, unfortunately, the kids got a bipolar 2 and we're on the same cycle. So it made some sense.
Right. Right.
But, it's strange because it was very, very soon after that I realized I was never going to try. Well, I can't say never, but I had no intention of trying it again. And when I came out a year after that was.
I think I'm not saying that being trans is a direct cause of suicide ideation. How we're treated is a different thing. But I think that that whole stress, and we've talked about the fear, and is this person going to think less of me? Is this person going to hate me? This person that I care for, are they going to treat me differently? Even if it's not hate, differently isn't a good thing either. All that adds to it, and I think that, and it just purely anecdotally, but I think that I don't think that we suffer any. I think physically we don't suffer any sort of suffer is not the right word, and I don't think we have any sort of larger suicidal ideations than the general populace. Could be wrong, but I think that everything that we have that goes along with us being us makes it more intense. And I'm not trying to diminish anything that anybody's going through who is not transgender. But when you have the almost every single religion telling me I'm going to hell, and you have politicians trying to take rights away, and you have even what are supposed to be secular entities, schools and libraries and this and that and whatever, although libraries are getting better. Like with the drag queen story hour type thing. Trying to push that cishet normative concept on people who identify as different. I think that that's a really strong it can be a really strong negative influence on people, especially the young farts, not like us, but the young farts who maybe they're 14 years old, and they've got they've had this idea for a long time that they're different, and they finally come out to a friend of theirs at school thinking they're going to be safe, and the friend has a completely bad reaction. Or you have school officials who will try to restrict LGBTQ clubs, and access, that type of thing. So I think that, even though, like I said earlier, it can be, the whole "it gets better" thing can be sometimes feel trite. It's true. Every single bout of depression that I've ever had, the times I tried to kill myself, the times I just thought about, quote unquote, just thought about killing myself, what's kept me going after the first couple of times of and realizing this, what's kept me going is that the whole, there's another side. There's another side to this. I don't say another side. Once I get to the other side of that particular bout of depression, it's not going to go away. I had a really good PA in Minnesota explain it to me this way. Your body, your mind is a tennis ball canister, and your depression is the tennis ball inside it. You can wrap that canister in pretty ribbons. You can put pretty paint around it, but it's not going to remove that tennis ball. Nothing's going to get rid of it. So you can try to mask it, or you can try to cope with it. And different people have different coping mechanisms. I use music sometimes. I use work. Sometimes I use work to get away from home. Sometimes I use home to get away from work, like most people do, I think.
Unfortunately, my work day's at home, so
yeah, that does make it a little difficult, but I'm sure you have a really good boss. You're like, maybe. I think my little bit of wisdom / advice I would give people in that situation is that there are multiple, think of it as a Swiss Army knife. There are multiple tools at your disposal. You don't have to be. Therapy is nice. Therapy is good. But if you can't get to therapy, there are ways that you can work through some of the things that you want to work through on your own. And if it takes, there's a Facebook meme I saw going around, which I think is really, really apt here. People say don't live for your, people say you shouldn't live for other things. Live for your dog, live for your flowers, live for your work, live for your plants, live, whatever it takes you to get through the day. Live for that. Because eventually, if you keep that habit up, you're going to start living for yourself, in my opinion.
No. I used to say a long time ago. I used to say, "Well, I'm waiting for the last MCU movie and the last Star Wars and the 9th Star Wars movie." Pretty much have to find something there.
Well, yeah, especially MCU. You're like, now what do I do? Well, and you sure can't be waiting for the last Game of Thrones book. Because, well, I suppose you could in a way, because he's never going to put that sucker out. Although, I've never seen any of the series. Never watched, not even like 5 minutes of it. I've read all the books, but I've never watched any of the show itself. Go ahead.
Oh, well, no. Lots of death and destruction and sex, and it's pretty good writing for the most part. People don't like the ending. I did. Yeah. All right. That's pretty much it. I wrote a song a bazillion years ago after reading the first book that incorporated some of the ideas in that, and I never thought. And another local band basically took a pretty complicated riff I'd written, and this is so not important, but the one thing that I was glad of when the show started was and became the biggest thing in the world was, okay, well, now I don't feel so bad about the riff being taken, because the chorus is "Winter is coming."
Right.
It's like, okay, we're good.
One of my favorite series, slight change of topic. One of my favorite series, I have every single episode. It was on TV for 37 years. And most people who see this be like, what? 205 seasons? No, 37 years. It started in 1973 and went to 2010. It's a British sitcom called Last of the Summer Wine.
Oh, yeah, I've watched a bunch of that.
And it's about 3 old farts and all the trouble they get into. The 2 of them are the same throughout almost the entire series, and that's Cleggy and Campo, played by Peter Sallis and Bill Owen. And the other third character has been played by a couple different actors. My favorite And the last one in the series to play him, or play that section of the trio, was Frank Thornton. He also played Captain Peacock on Are You Being Served?
Mm-hmm.
And I forget what year it was. I'd have to look it up. But the actor Bill Owen died. The writer for this series, he wrote every single episode, all 37 years. It was called Roy Clark with an E on the end. Not the banjo player. um, but they debated, and he died like mid-season. They'd already filmed all the shows for that season. Where they debated adding his death into it in some way, shape, or form, or not. Or a couple of the other actors had already passed away. So like one of them, who played the mother of one of the main characters. They didn't write her death in the series. She moved to Australia, so she was no longer in the show. So they decided
that is British slang for dying. So.
Right. So they decided to write his death into the series, and I bawled like a baby when I watched the show.
Yeah.
But of course, at that point, I was already, I had been emotionally invested in these guys, this trio, for years. But it's very genteel humor. There's no. Every once in a while, Campo will give the, flipping the finger off, but that's as risque as they get. And it's about three old guys who, like one of the shows, the entire show is about how they decide they're going to relive their youth, and they're riding along on bikes in this small Yorkshire town that they live in, and they see a big tree. I remember when I used to climb that tree as a kid, so they all climb up into the tree, and they can't get down. Because they're old and they're too afraid of falling and hurting themselves and whatever. So, yeah, it's an absolutely great series. Like I said, it was on for 37 years. That kind of humor, that kind of continuity in a show is what appeals to me.
See, when you said 37, British show, 37 years, I'm thinking, I know that show. Well, I was wrong. I thought you meant
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who.
Although I love Doctor Who. I remember watching it as a kid. I was a teenager, so this would have been in 76, 77-ish when I first started watching it. I was like, what the heck is this show about? And it came on because, with rabbit ears, okay, because that goes way back, kids, if you're watching this, Google it. Okay. So
I actually, wait a second. I actually have one right here.
Sweet.
I keep one just to have it. I don't know.
So with rabbit ears, I was able to get it. To tell you a short story, I had moved out from my ex's in Oklahoma, and of course it's Oklahoma, so it's tornado alley, okay. And so a tornado had gone through a couple days before, and it had not hit the town, but it come close enough, like it busted out some windows and whatever, and we were getting along fine. So I came over to help her replace the windows, and I'm talking with my stepdaughter, who was 5-ish at the time, and I had bought a power antenna for them, so that she could watch TV and whatever, till they got the cable back on. And I'm telling her as I'm hooking it, I even wrapped foil around the ends, whatever. So I'm telling her as I'm hooking it up, about how when I was a kid, we watched we only had 2 or 3 channels, and we had a third one if the weather was right. That's when PBS that I watched Doctor Who on, which is where it reminded me of. And she looked at me in a straight face and said, "You mean you didn't have Cartoon Network?" No, I didn't have Cartoon Network. Not in the 70s, no.
We didn't watch TV when I was growing up. I didn't. How I got to love Doctor Who is a lot to do with when I was bedridden for several years and a long recovery. I mean, I watched every episode, including the restored ones.
Who's your favorite Doctor?
Second.
Okay.
I'm second in current. I love Jodie.
Jodie, yeah. I unfortunately have not yet seen any episodes of Jodie. I saw like clips, on YouTube or whatever, and I saw all the douche bros, losing their minds over it, which I think is hilarious. But,
Well, I love Jodie anyway, so it
right.
was.
Peter, I thought was good. When I first started watching it again, because it'd been on, but I hadn't watched it for a while, and the show was kind of like, are we going to run it? Are we going to cancel it? Whatever. And then Christopher Eccleston came on, and I thought he was brilliant.
Yes.
As a doctor, he had a little bit, because they all had, like Pertwee, Baker had a little bit of a snarky attitude, but he was more. He had fun doing it at the same time. Pertwee, for me, was a little more serious, but Eccleston was just sarcastic. And not like in a horribly mean way, but, that was just him. And, he wore the leather jacket and whatever, and I liked his interpretation of the Doctor. And then after the first season, he's like, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to be typecast. Like, what?
No, yeah.
I was like, okay.
There's some question whether he's coming back for the 60th anniversary or not.
Right. So then this new guy comes along, David Tennant. I'm like, I don't know about this guy. Like everybody does, I don't know about this new Doctor. I like the old one. Why did they have to change it? And of course, my ex-boyfriend's sister, joking around one day, said, he's doing new porn now, don't you? I said, what? Yeah, his porn name is David Tennant. But I grew to really like him. I absolutely loved the skit he did with Catherine in.
On the Catherine Tate show? Yeah, that's Classroom.
Catherine Tate in Comedy 8 or Comedy Live or whatever it was, where he's the Scottish Shakespeare instructor. Yeah, it was awesome. But anyway, so they did 10 years or so of that, and I was like, okay, that's cool, whatever. Oh, he's leaving. Oh, that's too bad. Who's this new guy with a bow tie? He's gonna suck. And then, Matt Smith came along, like, yeah, whatever. Matt Smith, I don't care. I don't like the new Doctor. I like the old Doctor. And then I saw a clip. People can look it up. If you put into YouTube, put in Doctor Who, basically run. Put those words in. And there's like a 2 or 3 minute clip that will show up. And I was just like, he's got the right attitude. Yeah, I'll start watching him,
What?
And we were talking earlier about, episodes that made me cry, like of West of the Summer Wine. The death of Donna Noble. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I can't watch this. I want to watch it again. Because, you get that mentality or that mindset where, oh my God, it's horribly sad. Yes, I need to watch it again. What's his name? Oh, the horse that dies in the quicksand.
Eritrea? No, that was the...
I want to say anthrax, but that's not it.
Eritrea? Oh.
Airtrax or something like that. Whatever. Anyway, never-ending story. Okay.
Yeah, well, I
but I mean, I cry at, another one of my favorite movies, Labyrinth. Love Labyrinth. The scene where David Bowie, I actually teared up a little bit for him, where she rejects him, she's ballroom dancing with him, and you have no power over me, whatever. I loved that movie. And then one of my favorite movies of all time is, see if you can guess the movie. I'm sure you can.
Okay.
Have Fun Storming the Castle.
I finally saw that within the past... When did I see that? Yeah, just over a year ago.
Wow.
Finally.
Because
the person I was, my friend.
Inconceivable.
yes, my friend who she insisted I see it, and I wanted her to see Pretty in Pink because that was such an important movie to me.
Right.
But for some reason, we always fought when we were about to watch Pretty in Pink. So we got around.
No, I can't watch it. No, I can't watch it.
Well, no, it had nothing. We had other fights came up. It's like the only time we would fight. So fuck it. We just decided not to watch it.
And then, what was the other one I was thinking of? Oh well, going back to Labyrinth. All I have to do is put on my Facebook page. You remind me of the Babe, and then like 20 of my friends will chime in. You know.
Well, my the original version of that particular bit is from my favorite movie, my second favorite movie of all time, which is Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer, from Cary Grant and Shirley Temple.
I don't think I've seen it or heard of it. I'll have to check it out.
Written by Sidney Sheldon, of all things. It's the last good Shirley Temple movie. I mean, she was an adult by then. But,
right.
Eh.
Another one I like, speaking of older movies, another one I liked was it's not an older movie per se, but it involves older actors. Was Grumpy Old Men.
Yeah.
And Grumpier Old Men. And of course I cried when he died. Burgess Meredith played. There's a movie. I always think of it when I see him in any movie. There's a movie called The Sentinel. It's a horror movie.
Yes, it's fantastic.
And
it's awful, but it's fantastic.
Well, there's two of them. I didn't realize that there's two of them. The first one, the one I'm thinking of, is Burgess Meredith.
Yeah.
With Burgess Meredith, I should say. It's a big brownstone building, and this couple rents it, and it turns out it's the gate to hell.
Right.
The other one, I thought it was that movie, so I got it to rent it, and I'm watching it. And you see this. It starts out. You see this pond in the country. All of a sudden, this kid walks out of the water. I'm like, wait, what? And the kid
also a good movie.
Yeah, he walks down this country road into this church, and this bigger kid is there, and acts like he's going to bully this younger kid, for whatever reason. And then it switches, and there are these people. Of course, it's always these people. They're in a secluded area. It's a mountain retreat or a cabin where they can't get away, and they all die one by one from the 7 deadly sins. They represent the 7 deadly sins. Gluttony, sloth, whatever.
Yeah.
And it turns out that this kid is, I guess, like the angel of death or whatever. It was a really good movie anyway.
Don't give too much of it away. Well, spoilers for a movie that's 20 some years now.
Yeah. Or like Phantasm. Oh my God. You know the movie, right?
I have watched the entire series recently.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the first time I watched it.
I mean, again, I saw it when
right. The first time I watched it, I was like, okay, it's a movie. My first impressions of the movie were like the kid who I guess is the hero in the first one looked a lot like Danny Partridge to me.
Okay.
Not like identical, but somewhat like him. Okay. And then Angus, what is his name? The man.
I'm terrible with names. Remember.
Yeah, Angus something or other. Okay, he just passed away not too long ago. He's chasing the kid throughout the whole movie. I mean, that was kind of okay or whatever. And then that robot ball came out, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely going to be a favorite movie of mine. I like schlock movies like that. I don't, Clash of the Titans. Good one. Anything with
anything Harryhausen did, I like.
Yes.
I'm just
What's his
Even
name?
that, which
Sinbad.
is
Sinbad. I love all the Sinbad stuff.
God.
I was a big fan of mythology and Greek, Roman, whatever, when I was a teenager, and I've liked it all, I mean, I haven't read as much of it lately, but I've liked it ever since, I think, I don't remember what movie it was, or Harry movie I first saw was Harryhausen, but yeah, it was, I think it was a Sinbad one, and it was the scene I remember is where, excuse me, they sow the dragon's teeth in the ground and they come up skeletons.
That was the first one I saw too. It's Jason and the Argonauts.
Yes, yes. I love that movie.
That was my desktop for
Cool.
for years. Was still from that. Because yeah, I almost never watch a movie twice. It's a thing with me, or a TV show.
Right.
Once in a great while, or if I have to refresh myself because I only watched like half of one episode, the first episode. But I've seen Jason and the Argonauts now 15 to 16 times. It's this movie I've seen the second most after Rocky Horror.
I'm a little more, I've seen Rocky. Rocky Horror is really weird for me because I love the first. Did you see where Rip came out as anti-trans?
We're gonna. I actually wanted to ask you about that. So it's 151 times. I guess is the amount I've gone, and that's where I'm stopping. It saved my life when I was younger, but
right. Well, for me, the movie itself, for me, I liked the first half. We've talked before about depressing stuff. I just which is really weird because depressing music I like, but movies no. But the first half or so of Rocky I absolutely love. The rest of it you could throw it out and I wouldn't care. As far as him himself, I don't want to say necessarily that I'm not surprised. But I mean, like, I used to like to watch the TV series Hercules, and of course Xena. I love Xena.
yeah.
I've gone on Halloween as her. And then turns out, and I think he made the movie Kroll and a couple other movies, whatever it was. And then turns out that Kevin Sorbo is a right-wing Christian fanatic.
Yes.
And I was just like, no. So I try to have the ability to divorce myself from the person while liking the body of work.
Right. The death of the artist.
Right. So, for example, Sean Connery is absolute brilliant actor. Been one of my favorite actors for decades, and he's a complete asshole.
Yeah.
And there are many people like that. And to flip, there are people. I'm not real fond of Keanu Reeves as an actor, but from what I know of him as a person, he's a hell of a man.
Well, there was what started me on Death of the Artist, believe it or not, was there was a writer who was one of my favorite authors, and when I joined the HWA and I got to be in the small cons where it was just the writers, anytime I'd be in a room with him, I'd just want to smash my face into the wall. He was
Wow.
just terrible to be with. But I'd go home and I'd read his books, and it's like, he's a fucking wonderful writer.
Right. And
Harlan, he must have something going for him. That's the only hint I'm giving.
We talked about Heinlein before.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the most brilliant storytellers that I've ever read, and he works from. He's also misogynistic. He's homophobic, transphobic. in Lovecraft, we talked about Lovecraft, and Lovecraft has his own issues with race.
Yeah.
Um, and I think to some extent it depends upon. I guess I almost have to say, I guess that's my point of privilege. It depends. I have the privilege to say, well, I like writer A or like writer B, regardless of what they write. Regardless of what they write about topic X. And then, when that topic isn't directly affecting me, I have the ability to like that. But if it did affect me directly, then I'd be like, oh, screw that writer. So, I really have to, rethink, and I've been doing this lately, really have to rethink a lot of my, I haven't read anything from Heinlein. Of course, I've read almost everything he originally wrote, but I haven't reread anything in a long time from Heinlein because of it. Because now it sticks out at me like a sore thumb. Like, oh my God, how could he write this? Such a brilliant man, which he was, and such a brilliant storyteller, and he treats women like shit, and he treats gay people like shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And what for the studio audience here, the Richard O'Brien, who wrote Rocky Horror Picture Show and Shock Treatment, said that that trans women are
not women.
Can't call themselves women.
Right.
And Barry Humphries backed him up, which really sucks for me because I actually like Shock Treatment better, and that stars both of them.
I don't know who that is.
Dame Edna. Dame Edna.
Oh. Wow.
So.
Well, I mean, I posted, and it upset a lot of people, understandably so. I didn't post it with the idea to upset people, or necessarily to troll or to be shocking for that reason alone. But I wanted to make the corollary. I made a meme, and on the left side is Al Jolson in blackface, and on the right side is RuPaul. And my caption underneath read, "Bigotry is okay if it's coming from a dress."
Yeah.
Because RuPaul is transphobic, yes. Period. And a lot of a lot of people, especially cishet people, don't realize it, and I'm not necessarily faulting for that if they don't follow drag queens or whatever, don't realize that there's a lot of transphobic people in the drag community. Yes. Not all, of course, but a large portion of the drag community is white gay males, and traditionally, especially with the HRC, that's why I still to this day won't support them. I won't give them $1, not a penny. The HRC has had their what's the word I'm looking for? Members of their organization, their officers, the lower level, I should say, lower echelon people in different pride parades, being TERPs. And I'm not going to do it. For years, the HRC said, paraphrasing, vote for us, send us money, help support us, talking to the trans community now, and we'll get you added to the end of the legislation maybe next year. This year we can't do it, but maybe next year.
Well, they changed quite a bit in the last couple of years, so.
Oh, I hope so.
I'm very comfortable supporting them at this.
I mean, I'm willing to take another look at it.
Trans issues are really seriously high on their agenda right now. So
good, because we have enough TERFs as it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when you have people like O'Brien, when you have people like just recently within the last 24 hours, and other people may have known it ahead of time, but I saw on Twitter, William Shatner is an asshole.
Well,
You know, that may offend, you know, some geeky fans of his, whatever. You know, frankly, I don't care. When he goes on a rant, unprovoked, about SJWs and SJW this and SJW that, you know what, dude? I don't need your white cishet misogynistic crap. And that's basically what it is.
Right.
You know, and society doesn't need it. You know, we've come a long. We've got a long way to go, obviously, but we've come a long way from 20 years ago, from 50 years ago, from 100 years ago. You know, and yes, we still need to go farther, but one of the ways that we can go farther is by not backsliding. You know, and by pointing out. You know, I remember seeing something along these lines on Facebook and on Twitter. I'm on Twitter also, by the way. That
I will follow you.
Yeah, I'm. Let me think. The actual name you might see it under there as well, is the Sarcastic Skeptic.
Okay.
And it's at the Sarcastic SK1 is the actual. Why they couldn't do the Sarcastic Skeptic, I don't know, but maybe somebody else had it. But, you know, I think that if we don't allow the, you know, we don't condone, I should say, not allow, we don't condone the backsliding, and we don't condone the racism and the misogyny and transphobia and the homophobia. And, you know, a lot of transphobia is actually misogyny. And some TERFs just don't get that.
I found myself bizarrely in a Twitter fight with a British MP.
Because it's Tuesday.
Because that's just where I wound up.
That's what you do.
And he was trying to explain to me how trans is misogynistic. And then what did he say? Since you were socialized as a boy, you would automatically have the idea of bullying women to shut them up. I said, and my reply, because I was really kind of tired of this conversation by this point, was, "You mean like you're doing to me now?"
Right. You know, I got into a discussion. Let's get into that for a minute, because that's a whole can of worms.
Sure.
With Mr. Atheist.
Oh, fuck.
Jimmy Snow, I think his name is. Whatever his last name is, anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, Jimmy
Douchebro.
I don't know what to make.
As far as I'm concerned, but I got into a Twitter fight with him. Because he refused to, what's the word I'm looking for? Repudiate Woodford's video. And for those who may not know, Woodford made a very transphobic video about trans women in sports. I'm not going to go into great detail on it. You can see it, you know, look all over YouTube. You can see that and people's reactions, both, you know, on both sides of pro and con his video.
It's been mentioned every single one of these.
Right. As a result, it pretty much destroyed the ACA. Because the ACA had him on multiple times afterwards. And again, I'm not going to go into that. People can, you know, look it up, find it for themselves. But anyway, so I completely forgot where I was going with this.
Oh, you had a fight with Jimmy.
Oh, yes. So I had a fight with Jimmy. And in that Twitter fight, he did repudiate transphobic videos, but refused to call Woodford's video transphobic. And then when I pointed out that fact, he first of all tried, oh, look, I'm going to tag my transgender friend to defend me.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what he did, which didn't work with me, by the way. And then he tried oh, well, I'm sick. That's why I haven't made a video. And I was like, well, other people are sick. Well, you're saying that it doesn't matter if I'm sick. No, what I'm saying is that other people have been sick and made videos, and you've made videos since then. So don't tell me that you're sick. You can't make a video when you made other videos. Number two. And then number three, he tried the, oh, I'm pansexual. I can't be transphobic.
He's not transphobic. Let's just put it that way. But he also doesn't want to burn bridges.
Right.
But you have to stand. I mean, he stands up for a lot of things, and he should fucking well stand up for this.
Right. I don't think he's personally transphobic. No. But I think he cares more about money than he does about people. Flat out. And if he during this conversation, I'm sure that if he made any sort of criticism of Woodford's video whatsoever, it would be all over the Twitter sphere that, oh my God, Mr. Atheist is another one who's jumping on the bandwagon to knock Woodford's video, and he would lose subscribers. And that's what his bottom line. That's what he's looking at, is losing subscribers.
I don't know what his motivation is. I have some ideas that I would talk about off air, but I wouldn't talk on air about.
Okay, and that's fine. My
biggest problem with that is, of the 7 or 8 people who said they'd make a follow-up video after the Woodford's follow-up video came out, one did, and one had to be kind of chided into it and initially called it drama, which I was being a little nice to him about it, but it wasn't drama. It was, you're one of the people who said you'd do this, but Godless Engineer is the only one who did, so good on him. And he was the one I was not subscribed to out of all of them, because he was kind of shitty a few years ago, and I guess he's not anymore.
Dusty Smith was not great on a lot of issues like this.
Oh my God!
Years ago.
In
fact, I followed him. I had followed him for a couple of years, back during the heyday. For example, when he made his "I Love Monsanto" video, which I thought was hilarious and topical, on point, very accurate. And he, obviously he doesn't love Monsanto. In fact, he makes a point, near the end of the video that he says, quote, "I fucking hate Monsanto." But he was talking about GMO foods. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, that was during the time frame when I was following him. And I don't remember what the conversation was, but I got into a conversation on YouTube with him. And we didn't rant at each other or whatever. But where, I don't remember what the issue was, but he was on the wrong side of, it had something to do with misogyny. That's all I can remember. And so I was like, you know what? I don't need another douche bro. I'm just going to unfollow. And I unfollowed. And then I saw his video in response to the Woodford video. He basically ripped Woodford a new asshole. He also said at the end, which I agree in a theoretical sense, but he also said at the end, just because I like this video, just because I have this opinion about, Woodford's issue doesn't mean I'm going to treat anybody with kid gloves or something along those lines anyway. I don't remember the exact quote. But, I've heard from a lot of other people. I started following him again. I've heard from a lot of other people that he's evolved, I guess is a way to put it.
Yeah. He evolved into another life form entirely.
Right, and considering the bar to begin with, it wasn't hard to rise above that.
But he's full blown one of us now. So, good. And even when he makes mistakes, he'll on his show he won't ever cut this out. When he'll say something and he says. And then he'll say something and he realizes, and he said, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was not correct." And then goes into why it wasn't.
Oh, good. Good on him.
And
yeah, and I liked him. This is also about. He made some rap video with a guy that was freaking hilarious. Yeah, I liked him back in the day. So I'm glad that he's an epiphany, at least about some issues. You know, he doesn't. Again, he doesn't have to agree with me. You know, I can like or follow someone that doesn't agree with me on every issue, and that's fine. Like I say on my Facebook, but if our disagreement is about my existence,
Yes.
it's not going to happen. We're not going to agree. We're not going to be friends. We're not going to be buddies. We're not going to be pals. It's just not going to happen. I may, converse with you as an adult, because I am an adult and I try to be adult. I don't always succeed, but I try to be adult. But
It's overrated.
if you're gonna, I'm not a they take the low road, you take the high road, and no, I don't take the high road. How you come at me is how I'm going to come at you. If you come at me with respect and consideration, even if you disagree with something, I will come back with you with the same. But because you couch something in polite language, doesn't make that courteous or respectful. You know, you can make a comment about what do they call it? They have a term for it, race realists, which is basically racism. But they try to, evolution says, or science says, okay,
like gender critical is really
right.
turfs.
If you come at me with bullshit, I don't care how polite it is. I'm not going to respond with politeness. I don't deal with bullshit well. I don't tolerate bullshit. I can tolerate ignorance. I can't stand stupidity.
Yeah, there's I'll get dinged once in a while. Well, you're not having a polite and respectful conversation, and this happened. Me and another trans person, Brandy Kitty, were like the last trans standing in the ACA forum, in the ACA forums, and everybody tried to ding us on, you're not having a respectful conversation. I said, you're not respecting my existence. So,
right. Piss the fuck off. I'm sorry, but piss the fuck off. You don't like it? My family knows, I have some tag phrases. One of kiss my big white Irish ass. People are shit-suckingly ignorant. When you if you genuinely don't know something, I don't have a problem with that, and I will try to educate you. I like to be educated myself. If I genuinely don't know something, I'm ignorant of a lot of stuff. But when when that information is available to you, and you turn that information away because of ideology, because of religion, because of misogyny, whatever, I have no time for that. I'm gonna be 59 next month. I ain't got time for bullshit.
Yeah, I'm much more subtle a fighter now, but I think I'm, if nothing else, being raised by the very disparate two people I was raised by. I mean, a Nazi and a showgirl.
Right. That's a little different.
She's not a showgirl. She's a singer.
Okay. Cool.
Being a writer, I can be very vicious and in very, very well done language.
Right. And getting back to the whole, tone policing, because that's what we're talking about. In language, you can have a conversation with someone and sprinkle your language with a shit and a fuck and a damn and a cunt and a cocksucker and whatever, and be, I don't want to say necessarily be respectful, but just be, that's just, y'all joking around, having a good time, whatever. Sure. You can bring some really horrible concepts forward and use polite language And like you said, you're using disrespectful language. No, I'm not going to put up with BS. I'm not going to. If you lie about position X, if you make a claim, and then when I ask you, atheists do this. It ain't just believers. You make a claim about position topic X, and when I ask you to back it up, I don't know how many times I've seen this over the years, the last 20 years especially. An atheist will make a claim about something.
Yeah.
I'll ask them to prove their claim, okay, to back it up, and they use the exact same mechanisms, defense mechanisms, that a theist would use. That if a theist used it to prove their God, for example, they would deride that theist considerably, point out the holes in their logic, et cetera, but yet they think it's okay for them to use it. To be transgender, for example, is a perfect example of this. A theist can say, not that I agree, but at least a theist has a book to back them up, can say, well, God says, he created, two people, male and female, he created them. Okay. So when you don't have that Bible or Tanakh or the Hindu Vedas or whatever to back you up,
Well,
what's
the Vedas
your justification?
Trans friendly.
Right. But as an example, but and I love the Ramayana. It's one of my favorite books. But what's the English translation? But what's your justification for being against transgender people, which is like being against black people, or being against Latinos, or being against white people? I don't understand it. But anyway,
Sure.
if your justification is what is your justification? Well, science says. Well, actually, no, science doesn't. The science is very clear on it. The science does not agree with or justify or back up what you say in any way, shape, or form.
Mm.
So then, it's third grade biology. Well, you know what? There's 12th grade biology. There's college biology. And that completely refutes your third grade biology. There's third grade math. So are we going to be able to use that third grade math to discover the orbital mechanics of a black hole in the center of the galaxy? No, because we have higher mathematics. We have better math.
That's more polite than I usually am by that point.
Right. That's usually where I kind of like to start. With.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have a problem. Like I said, I don't have a problem coming at people how they come at me. If they come at me, with courtesy and respect, I will give them courtesy and respect in return. I'm not a Christian. I don't have to turn the other cheek. And I do not believe in karma. I do not believe in what goes around comes around. I do not believe in, your actions can have reactions.
Yeah.
But there's no sort of larger force that determines the luck or the happenstances of daily living. And this world is what we are going to make it in this. And I don't have time for racist, religious, or gender bullshit.
No. I don't know. The first month on Spiral was Spiralactone was very strange for me, and I don't hear this from other trans people, so it was possibly just my reaction. But for about the first month and a quarter, I could not get angry. And it was actually bothering me because there were times I really needed to get angry.
Right.
And I just couldn't get angry. I knew, okay, this is the place where angry is supposed to go.
Right. Huh.
And everyone else I tell it to, they go, well, I didn't have that reaction. And
I didn't either.
Yeah. So
For
Maybe.
me, I don't know if it was just Spyro or just the Estradiol or the combination or whatever. I'm sleeping a hell of a lot better. I mean, a lot better.
Yeah.
And that's a beneficial thing to me. I remember, because I say that I have ADHD. I haven't been clinically diagnosed, to be honest. Okay. I have a lot of the symptoms, like of the 16 classical symptoms, I have like 14. But I remember reading somewhere, I'll have to look it up. I remember reading somewhere that long-term sleep deprivation can mimic the symptoms of ADHD.
Yes.
Lack of focus, lack of control over emotions, et cetera, impulsive behaviors. And I have had problems sleeping since the 70s.
Same.
So I don't know. I'm not saying that's a cure for ADHD, but for me, whatever symptoms I have that are ADHD-like have at least been lessened now that I'm sleeping better.
Hmm.
So I need to get going here because I have not eaten in about 24 hours.
Oh, we've been going for a very long time, which is great. We wandered all over the place, and I kind of like that too.
Right. So
I try and guide these, but
right.
when we were talking before, I said, "Nah, screw it. Let's just hang
out."
Yeah,
it's like like herding cats. So if anybody wants to send me a question, my Facebook is Erin Greene, ERINGREENE. That's my Patreon. That's my Amazon author page. You can also look up, I have a book of poetry called Nobody Reads Poetry Anymore. I have a book for kids called kids ages 10 to 100, called The Land of Fall, where it's always autumn, because I love autumn. Has some short stories on Amazon as well. Some of those are also on my Patreon. There's a free audiobook on my Patreon. You don't have to register. You don't have to do anything. You can just click the site, go to my Patreon, click the link, and you'll hear Chris Courtney's voice, which is absolutely phenomenal. He's probably, I'm very, very lucky in the fact that he's a friend of mine because he's a nice guy. He's a funeral officiant in England, and he also runs marathons for charity. Just a dear man. But he did Pumpkin Jack and the Fountain, beautiful rendition. He also did the intro for another science fiction novel I'm working on called The Swiss Experiment. And I want to give a shout out to one person. This right here, I got in the mail yesterday. Where's my camera? There it is.
No,
nope. There we go. Okay.
Oh, very nice.
It's the box set.
Who sent it to you?
Set. The Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman. And so Nicole, thank you very much. I love it. I appreciate it. I will be reading the first book tonight. And it looks like it's a standard paperback size, which means that since I have tonight off, I'll probably have the whole thing read by by the time I have to go back to work. Because I can read one of these in like 4 hours.
It's very dense. It's a teenage book. It's a teen book, but it's very dense.
I love the movie, so I'm hoping it's sort of, they coincide, because they don't always.
I did not see the movie, so
don't get me started on Stephen King adaptations that they screw up. Tommy Knockers. And,
yeah, but then there's The Mist, which is better.
The Mist, I absolutely hated and loved at the same time. I hated because it went right along with the freaking book story.
Right.
And I loved it because it went right along with the story. So I hated it and loved it for the exact same reason. Great acting, great writing. Of course, I love Stephen King, but great writing, good screenwriting as well. And I get mad just thinking about the ending. So anyway,
the ending still gives me nightmares, which is what a horror movie should do.
right.
And hopefully here, this is my segue. Hopefully this hangout didn't give anybody out there nightmares if they're still with us.
Right.
And I always forget to do the like, comment, and subscribe.
Right.
We'll have all the links down in the description. Since we're doing this at early in the morning, and it's going up tonight, so it's going up at 8 o'clock Eastern.
Wow.
So
it's almost 11:30 here.
Yeah, same. So
It's been a little while.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate
thank you for being.
I
enjoyed the hell out of talking to you in general, so it was great.
With this newfangled technology, this Zoom thing, I'm gonna have to do this more often. It says 2 participants, so I guess you can do more than one.
Yeah, do up the most I've seen on here is 6. So
interesting, and I'm assuming because like at the top they have a little thumbnail area that shows my camera.
Right.
So I'm assuming maybe like if we had a third person on, that would show up as well.
Yeah, it all shows up on the top. And if you said it's a speaker view, we would have been bouncing back and forth because whoever's speaking or making the most noise is the one who.
Right, it flips to, right, whatever. So,
all right.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, we both have to get some sleep before.
Yeah, before I wake up tonight, because I gotta get this book done, and I got another one that started, and I haven't eaten yet, and I gotta go. So, peace out.
Peace out. Live long and prosper. Thanks. And thank you for watching again. I'll have all the links in the description a little later. Well, before you see it, but after I get some sleep. And thanks to Erin Greene again. That was fun as hell. I don't know how it was on your end. I hope it was fun too. And I'll see you next time. I'll figure out a sign off one of these days. Bye.